Greetings. We're back again with King Channel TV and with exciting new content. All of our current subscribers and supporters, a special thanks to all of you. A lot has been happening. In our previously published videos, we covered the full saga of Fani Willis up until the time when Judge Scott McAfee ruled against attorney Ashley Merchant and denied the motions of other defense teams and their defendants. All of our takeaways from the Fani Willis disqualification hearings are located in the section Georgia against 45. Here we show and discuss the conflict of interest, the forensic misconduct and perpetual lies that were committed by Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. Moving forward to a couple of months. May 2024. Very little has changed. The lies continue. Appeals are being made and waiting to be heard. We're at a standstill, sharing the feelings of many that justice has not been served and that the rising star, Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, has frizzled and justice is void. Now, let's look at the backboard and talk a little about some of the players in this saga. But first, don't forget to like and share the video, subscribe to King Channel TV and click that notification bell. Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee has been considered a beacon for those accused. With fair-minded judgment by the letter of the law, not by the law's interpretation, the public was elated with his ruling against the state of Georgia's motion to send defendant Harrison Floyd back to the notorious Fulton County Jail, without the possibility of bail. He also ruled against many other unjust motions submitted by Fulton County DA Fani Willis in her blind state of fairness. After he only ordered a partial breakup of the Fulton County DA's office, many felt let down and applied his actions to the upcoming election runoff for his judge seat. But the runoff has been settled, with Judge McAfee holding on to the seat. Robert Patillo's campaign efforts, the media's false speculations, and their spread of unreliable information that Patillo was the favorite of black voters, proved to be an embarrassment to him. With a 60,000 to 12,000 loss now, we wonder if a change will come. Is the end near for Fani Willis? For the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, his accomplishments have been hidden and are continually denied. We don't understand why. There is a profound hatred of him by the masses of both black and white America. A land with such a deep, dark hatred can only mean spiritual and physical danger and loss for every soul living on it. Trump's efforts to win the approval of black voters are growing, but this has been a long uphill struggle. Of all people living on the earth, black people should know better, particularly those whose ancestors came through the hulls of ships. We should be able to see through a clearer lens, know who our friends are and who our enemies are. Every man is judged according to his works. Revelations 20:12. We're an example of a forerunner. Having experienced some of the deeds perpetrated against Donald Trump, all nations and governments have hated us without a cause. They have taken, plundered, and destroyed our heritage, even the knowledge we had of our God. They have taken the goods we created and mastered with our own hands and minds, divided them among themselves, and among strangers. What crime did we do? They are now seeking to tear down the Trump companies and distribute them among his enemies. What crime did Trump do? 30 years ago, 1994, President Biden, Bill Clinton, and others started a mass incarceration movement sponsored by the Democratic Party. They devised a 3 strikes you are out law of over-policing and mass criminalization that terrorized black people across the country. They divided, destabilized, and destroyed the black family structure for an entire generation. A family structure that has not been regained. Watch our video, The Curse of the 13th Amendment. To this day, this bill has been the largest federal criminal justice legislation in U.S. history. Accordingly, its main goal was to reduce violent and drug crime by being tough on crime. It was signed into law by President Bill Clinton and sponsored by former Vice President Joe Biden. The program provided grants and incentives for more corrections facilities to states that had no early release programs for prisoners with good behavior, states that had mandatory sentencing of 85% of conviction. Prisons were built in places where they did not previously exist, in neighborhoods. A prison grid wall for the children to see as they play neighborhood basketball, ride their bicycles.
We must take back the streets. It doesn't matter whether or not the person that is accosting your son or daughter or my son or daughter, my wife, your husband, my mother, your parents. It doesn't matter whether or not they were deprived as a youth. It doesn't matter or not whether or not they had no background that enabled them to become socialized into the fabric of society. It doesn't matter whether or not they're the victims of society. They must be taken off the street. Unless we do something about that cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing, because they literally, I yield myself 3 more minutes, because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. We should focus on them now. If we don't, they will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society. And the truth is, we don't very well know how to rehabilitate them at that point. You cannot make rehabilitation a condition for release. That's why in our system, there's the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. I don't care why someone is a malefactor in society. I don't care why someone is antisocial. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society, try to help them, try to change their behavior, but they are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. But we would be absolutely stupid as a society if we didn't recognize the condition that nurtured those folks still exist, and we must deal with that.
Thank you, Brianna. Now, we are here in 2024, 30 years later, and we are still reeling from the fallout of the mass incarceration movement, which was to curtail crime. But it in fact made crime worse. Of a truth, it was designed to take Black people, especially young Black men, out of society. They have not been socialized, says Joe Biden, meaning they have not been made to behave in a way that is acceptable to society. Biden also says they are beyond the pale, meaning they are outside the boundaries of morality. They are unacceptable, offensive. They are America's future predators, and America has no choice but to take them out of society. With the government publicly applying such a label to its young citizens, we can see why, in 2014, 20 years from the inception of the 1994 crime bill, police officer Darren Wilson killed 18-year-old Mike Brown, and his body laid in the streets for about 5 hours. We can see why, in 2012, 18 years from the 1994 crime bill, 28-year-old George Zimmerman shot and killed a 17-year-old unarmed child, Trayvon Martin, while going to his father's house, and to this day, has received no punishment for it. We can see why Dylan Roof entered the basement of Mother Emanuel AME Church in South Carolina when he approached a small prayer group, a rising star preacher, an elderly minister, 8 women, 1 young man, and a little girl. To him, they were a problem. He believed that, as Black Americans, they were committing violent crimes, raping their women, and taking over the country. So he took out his Glock handgun and calmly, while their eyes were closed in prayer, opened fire on the 12 people gathered in the basement and shot almost every single one of them dead. And now again, 30 years from the inception of mass incarceration, the Democratic Party perpetuates the mass migration of illegal immigrants from across the earth into the southern border and other areas of the United States. The goal of this mass migration movement, we believe, is another plight to remove Black people from society. By weakening our vote, stealing our homes, real estate, reducing our employment opportunities, etc. After all, it is their belief that Black people are taking over the country. The effects of mass immigration, whether legal or illegal, on African Americans, and we are referencing those whose ancestors came through the hulls of ships, are an injustice and embarrassing. An injustice by so many ways that we can't count. Embarrassing because the majority of us brought this on the minority of us with eyes wide open. Lying, slippery tongues have sucked the hope out of all of our lives. We allowed these in our minds for the purpose of using us to do their destructive works on and against us. We are the ones who were stolen from the shores of another land, a place we then called home, and upon arrival to a place that was hateful to us and desolate of mercy for us for hundreds of years, we finally rose up and taught even them freedom, justice, and peace for their souls. Yet they rose up against us again and again, destroying our cities, businesses, homes, and families. How many times can a people rise up before there is no longer a desire? Ours is recorded in the annals of history, and the recorder is the Lord God Almighty. Who of you, made from the dust of the earth, is able to erase his words? Sanctuary cities like New York, Chicago, and Washington, D.C., once falling over themselves to show their virtue and welcome the immigrants, are now calling for a state of emergency after tens of thousands of migrants have been forced upon their social welfare programs. But the resistance to importing millions whose first act on U.S. soil is to enter illegally, breaking the law, is coming from Black Americans, who are sick of having our fight for equity in this country taken by people looking for a better economic outlook. After all, the fight for justice began with us, while countless others have reaped its benefits.
Thank you, Imani. During his presidency, President Trump championed policies that have brought back to life many portions of the Black community and removed many ills that have sucked the life out of it. One of the most damaging pieces of legislation to be embodied within the heart of the Black community was the 1994 crime bill. It brought about mass incarceration and literally broke up the Black family structure to the point of non-repair. In 2018, President Donald Trump signed into law the First Step Act, a sweeping criminal justice reform bill designed to promote rehabilitation, lower recidivism, and reduce excessive sentences in the federal prison system. 90% of those who have had their sentences reduced are Black Americans. The First Step Act shortens mandatory minimum sentence for nonviolent drug crimes. It ended mass incarceration in federal prisons. President Trump has proposed the Second Step Act to partner with corporate America to create opportunities for former prisoners to rejoin society.
Good morning, Robin Jillian. It's a moment that Alice Marie Johnson surely will cherish forever. The 72-year-old great-grandmother running into the arms of family and friends after President Trump grants her clemency. Watch.
I want to thank President Donald John Trump. Woo! Thank you. Thank you for giving me another chance in life and restoring me to my family.
Johnson served 21 years of her life sentence in an Alabama prison for taking part in a drug ring. The White House issuing a statement saying, quote, Ms. Johnson has accepted responsibility for her past behavior and has been a model prisoner over the past 2 decades. Despite receiving a life sentence, Alice worked hard to rehabilitate herself in prison and act as a mentor to her fellow inmates. Instead of celebrating, though, some Democrats are accusing President Trump of favoring famous people, of course. So we asked everyone on social media, why do Democrats oppose President Trump around every corner, it seems? And Ron on Twitter says the Democrats oppose everything President Trump tries to accomplish because that is the only thing they know how to do. Julie on Facebook says, so happy for this poor woman. God bless her and put her on a path that shows her gratitude for the second chance our president has given her. I share the joy of her family. Our President Trump is a good man. Sometimes all you need is for someone to believe in you.
No champion policies came out of the Obama presidency that were designed to improve the standard of living for Black people. Although Obama deported a massive number of them, illegal migration into the U.S. seemed to have been on the rise during the Obama presidency. When President Trump became president, He devised a plan to curtail illegals entering the country along the southern border by building a barrier wall. In the days before Joe Biden became president, construction crews worked quickly to finish Donald Trump's wall. Biden then ordered a pause on all wall construction within a week, on his first day in office, including 6 dealing with immigration.
But we do begin tonight with President Biden planning to now build more of the border wall, a major reversal from his campaign for president saying he would never build more of the wall. Tonight, his Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, saying, quote, there is an acute and immediate need to construct physical barriers and roads near the border. The numbers are daunting. More than 2.2 million migrants crossing the border since last October in just the last year. Towns and communities along the southern border pleading for help. And now leaders in cities across the U.S., buses arriving in New York City. We have reported on the migrants sleeping on sidewalks. In Los Angeles, dealing with the flow of migrants too, Democratic mayors and governors have called for federal action as well.
It is insulting that you would consider such action about a forgotten community that none of you live in.
Developing tonight, outbursts and outrage at a community meeting in South Shore over a housing plan for migrants.
The debate comes as the city deals with the crisis of where to put migrants bussed in from the border.
Elizabeth Matthews is live now with more. Elizabeth.
Corey and Don, contentious to say the least. This forum was a chance for city leaders to get input from the public about the old South Shore High School housing migrants. The city got their input.
A packed house at the South Shore International College Prep High School. The crowd voicing their opinion, strongly opposing the addition of migrants in their community.
I am just outraged. I'm outraged, and I don't understand why our community was chosen.
City representatives saying the old South Shore High School would not be a shelter, but one of 3 respite centers for the migrants to temporarily sleep, eat, and take a shower, starting with about 250 people taking up the building's first floor. This is a way for the city to get the current 300 migrants out of the police stations.
The African-American unemployment rate reached about 17.9% during the Obama presidency and dropped to about 5% during the Trump years. Of course, many will protest that this drop in African-American unemployment was due to Obama. We would say this is not true. A deep dive into the data and daily analysis show that the average African-American unemployment rate under Obama was 12%, and under Trump it was 7%. We believe the period 2010 through 2021 was carved out to produce the most powerful economics advancements for Black people, and could have been called a golden age of economic growth for Black people. Barack Obama, by his very election, gave Black people a sense of pride. We can do anything, although he produced no policies that were designed specifically for the healing of many of the Black community ills. He opened up many federal tokens, like tax credits, affordable health care, and fixing the housing crisis. Once these tokens had provided a measure of strength and stability to many in the Black community, Donald Trump entered the scene with true policies designed for and delivered directly to Black Americans. Many thought the one entering the scene at this time would be Hillary Clinton. After all, the women's movements were very powerful at this time, but the authors of Time did not see it this way. Donald Trump was the chosen one. At the beginning of his presidency, he brought powerful tools to spur Black economic growth that were not federal government tokens. President Trump designated 8,760 opportunity zones that were projected to spur $100 billion in private investment in our communities. These were areas designated for economic growth to underserved communities. Studies found that by the end of 2020, at least $48 billion had been invested in nearly 4,000 opportunity zones across every state nationwide. The zones increased commercial and residential development, boosting housing supply and values, and creating positive economic spillovers for neighboring communities. We all must know that the first step to gaining wealth is through owning housing, residential, and commercial real estate. Over 1.4 million more Black Americans found a job between President Trump's election and February 2020. Jobs like construction that were not regularly seen held by Black people were popping up everywhere. Black men who were usually seen walking along the construction trail with a shovel and a pick were now seen operating and driving heavy-duty equipment. Black poverty reached a historic low in 2019. Government tokens like welfare do not work in building generational wealth for a people. It is temporary relief at a time of setback. Economics were not the only plight taken on by President Trump to heal the standard of living endured by Black people. He bridged into the education arena, calling for $500 million in federal funding for school choice. And in 2018, he signed legislation increasing school choice funding by $42 million for HBCUs. He provided more than $500 million in loans through the Capital Financing Program. He worked with HBCUs to protect $80 million in Title III carryover funding and signed the Future Act into law, which permanently funds HBCUs and simplifies the FAFSA application. He signed a budget deal which forgave more than $300 million in debt owed by 4 HBCUs impacted by natural disasters and provided $10 million in loan payment deferments for schools that face financial difficulties, including HBCUs, and worked with Congress to lift the ban on Pell Grants on summer classes.
In 2021, President Trump's presidency came to an end. With all the work he had done for Black people, the country, and the masses of the people of the United States coming to a close, we may call it an unfortunate manipulation of time. Instead of issuing a bridge to bring forward his works, the incoming administration tore down all that he had done, with the exception of a few things it could not destroy. A pandemic was brought in that caused massive death and suffering. The unemployment rate of Black people began to rise as many suffered job losses. The incumbent president, Joe Biden, halted the construction of the barrier wall, causing a flood of illegal immigrants to pour into the country. This brings our documentary to a close. We hope you enjoyed it. Please like the video, subscribe to King Channel TV, click that notification bell. Peace.